Dying Light 2 stands out by creating one of the most fun and engaging open worlds in recent memory, and it is not worth your time. At least, not at launch, and certainly not as much of your time as it's going to try to take. Okay, let me explain. Dying Light 2 improves on almost every aspect of the 2015 original, which already wasn't no slouch. This is a franchise that was built on the single idea of what if Mirror's Edge, but zombies. And fortunately, Techland is absolutely able to deliver on that concept. The game's two biggest focuses are on the combat and parkour, and everything from the world to the skill trees have all been designed to make those two things as fun as possible. Skill trees in open world games are too often filled with skills that I'll either never use or just never understand. Having to waste levels investing into these to get the better skills at the end of the trees takes all the fun and momentum out of progression. So by the time I finish the game, I normally always look back on my experience with skill trees in the same way.
I don't know half of you half as well as I should like, and I like less than half of you half as well as you deserve.
But if you think this game is going to neglect the fun and momentum, then you haven't been paying attention. The world of Villedor is designed with one goal in mind: traversal. And you can traverse it well enough right from the get-go, albeit in a pretty clunky fashion.
What's the matter, David? Never taken a shortcut before?
The world is created in a way that as you play through the first few hours, you'll be thinking to yourself, I wish I could climb a bit faster, or I wish I could jump a bit farther, or it'd be nice to be able to keep momentum when I land. All of these skills and many, many more are available to invest in, and it makes the progression feel organic. By the time clambering over fences was just starting to get too annoying, it would be time for me to get a point to invest in making that animation faster, smoother, and about 100 times cooler.
What's the matter, Danny? You never taken a shortcut before?
That same feeling of natural progression goes for the combat for the most part. Things get a lot more aerial in this game, and it mostly works. Even after years of advances in technology and game design, to me, first-person melee combat is always going to look like this. So I was a bit nervous when I started seeing footage like this. Fortunately though, it all controls fairly smoothly. Having such a limited field of view meant that I would often get surrounded by human enemies and hit from lots of different directions all at the same time, but it rarely resulted in me not being able to handle that encounter. The zombies are a completely different story though. In situations like that, encourage flight over fight, particularly depending on the time of day. Like its predecessor, Dying Light 2 plays heavily into its day and night cycle, but here, the night's more dangerous than ever. In daytime, zombies will seek shelter indoors and away from direct sunlight, keeping the most dangerous volatiles out of your way. At night, however, they'll be out and about, and if one of them spots you, well, we've all seen Fate of the Furious by now. Yeah, not a great time. These chases are insane. Zombies are crawling out of vents and throwing themselves off the roofs of buildings in every direction, and the intensity only increases the longer the chase goes on. So if the ongoing and ever-present threat of coronavirus wasn't already enough to make you stay inside, then what possible reason could there be for braving the night? Well, I'm so glad you asked. While all the night terrors are roaming the streets, it leaves the normally packed buildings relatively quiet. There might be a lazy zombie or two left behind, but for the most part, the hordes are gone. This means that anything from shopping centers to GRE facilities can be looted for some pretty important rewards with less risk.
Wait. I worry what you just heard was...
Can be looted for some pretty important rewards without risk.
What I said was...
And be looted for some pretty important rewards with less risk.
Do you understand?
Because there is one final piece to the puzzle that ties this all together. In Villedor, everyone is infected, but not everyone has turned. Rather than needing medication to keep you from turning like in the original, being under the cool glow of a UV light or regular sunlight is enough to keep your infection at bay. So when night falls or you step out of the sunlight, a timer will start counting down, and when it hits 0, you turn. Because there's a fairly robust crafting menu in this game, it means you can pick up lots of junk pretty much everywhere you go. Even though the game tells you it's all useful, all the hoodies in the world can't hide from the fact that dumpster diving is a pretty big part of the gameplay loop here.
Electrics? Electrics? Whoa! A sneaker. What size? 14. Throw it in the pile, baby.
And I'm fine with that. I'm one of those guys that picks up 300 wheels of cheese in Skyrim because it's just there and I can. So this is kind of a big draw for me. This means that when you're scavenging these emptied buildings at night, there's a real sense of urgency now. Do I continue looking through every single trash can when I know that all I'm going to find is scrap? Or do I keep moving to make sure that I can get back to a UV zone before my timer runs out? It really challenges you to prioritize your time and ask yourself questions like, is leaving here with all these cans truly worth it?
This is never easy to say. I'm gonna have to saw your arms off.
They'll grow back, right?
Oh, yeah.
Homer, are you just holding on to the can?
Your point being?
Okay, well, I love dumpster diving and the feeling of natural progression. I hear you cry. Why is it not worth my time? So this is where the game starts to become its own worst enemy a bit. The open world is chock full of things to do, and if you're willing to invest the time, then the game will keep you engaged. Even around 20 hours into my playtime, I was still being introduced to new activities and mechanics to the game at a time when most other games would be finishing. On top of that, there are side quests galore, and it feels like the design principle with these was throw enough shit and something will stick. Games like The Witcher 3 offer side quests that are just as memorable as the main story, but with this quantity over quality approach, you never encounter these same epic, heart-wrenching moments that will stay with you until your final breaths.
Here, your frying pan.
Before the game even came out, the developers promoted the fact that it would take 500 hours if you wanted to do everything there was to do in the game, to which they then quickly clarified that most people wouldn't actually do that when people started to panic. Look, I don't claim to be any sort of hero, but I put 25 hours into completing the main game and a healthy amount of side content, and based off that, let me tell you, 80 hours seems like way too much, let alone 500.
My God, he's right! My work here is done! I'm off to find others in need! God bless you, Captain Hardsheart! God bless you!
Now there are two key issues with this much content. The first is, like I said, the game gives you new activities, mechanics, and game-changing traversal tools like the paraglider and grappling hook throughout the main campaign. I would estimate it takes about 15 hours of just main missions to unlock everything you need to fully explore. The second issue is that if you try and clear out the map methodically before moving on to the next part, you're most likely going to burn yourself out well before ever making it to any of that content. I mean, if I wasn't reviewing the game, I know for sure I would have never made it to the end before becoming bored. And honestly, that's not the worst thing in the world. The less to be said about the story, the better, because the ending basically comes down to,
I have to go now. My planet needs me.
and while the characters in the story are great, and there are lots of decisions to be made and sides to choose from, none of them actually ever really feel like they mattered or had any repercussions. There are two factions at play, the survivors and the peacekeepers, all campaigning for your help to one-up the other faction. No matter what you do or what decisions you make though, both will continue to work with you because you're just that good, I guess. Now, if you have the time for 20, 80 or 500 hours to sink into this game, I would still say it's not worth your time now. Not because it's not good, but because it will be even better, not to mention cheaper in the future. While there are still some bugs to iron out, some that I think they should leave in, and some that need to be removed ASAP. Sooner or later, they'll all be fixed because the developer is Techland. They've already said that they'll support this game for at least another 5 years with new content, and you can believe it because the original game received new story content up until just a week before Dying Light 2 came out. For a 7-year-old game! The original Dying Light is vastly different and improved from what it was at launch, and Dying Light 2 will be no exception. This is the perfect game to pick up in a sale in between releases, and you'll probably have a ball with it too. Much like a trip to your favorite buffet, Dying Light 2 is a game where your eyes can sometimes be bigger than your stomach. One moment, you're loving life, coming back to the table after a fun jaunt to the seafood section and wondering where you'll be off to next. But before you know it, you're doing the dreaded, I've already eaten everything I want to eat, but I'll be damned if I don't get my money's worth run. Dying Light 2 is a great game, but it will overstay its welcome if you let it. While it's not worth all of your time right now, it is worth some of your time soon. If you want more of that parkour goodness without all the zombie fear, then I've got you covered in this video where we look at is it too late to play Mirror's Edge in 2022? Give that like button a tap and consider subscribing for new videos each Friday. Heck, sometimes even more often if I sleep less. See you next time.